Namaste everyone. Welcome to the seventh module, an introduction to the synthesis of yoga. For this, we have Dr. Alok Pandeji with us. Dr. Alok Pandey needs no introduction. He has been with us throughout this year-long journey. But for the sake of those who are joining us newly for this module, Dr. Alok Pandey, the doctor, author, and motivational speaker from the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Pondicherry. He will be speaking on the topic All Life is Secret Yoga. I welcome Dr. Alok Pandeji to today's lecture. Namaste, sir.
Namaste. Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Namaste. All life is a secret yoga of nature. This is one of the Mahavakyas of Sri Aurobindo, which occurs in the Synthesis of Yoga under the chapter titled The Integral Perfection. As the name itself implies, integral perfection, Sri Aurobindo gave us a new goal of yoga, a goal that is newest of the new and yet when seen from another angle is the oldest of the old. The newness of the goal is that instead of an escape from life into nirvana, moksha, or even sometimes a supra terrestrial state like Narada dwelling with his Lord into the beyond, Sri Aurobindo's yoga emphasizes on perfection here upon earth. But this perfection itself is many layered. At each level, we find a perfection. There is a perfection of the plant kingdom where it enters into its maximum possibilities and a kind of interchange with the world around it. It thrives, survives, grows, creates out of itself many other similar prototypes, and thereby there is a balance of creation which is maintained. So, this is one kind of perfection. There is also the perfection of the animal world where each type grows to its maximum possibilities and thereby it again grows, evolves, survives, evolves within its own limits, not evolves that way, but yes, grows and reproduces similar kinds of species and finds its own place in the vast cosmic creation. And then comes the human perfection. Now, when it comes to human beings, there is a limited human perfection, which is what we normally call as the ethical, moral, or religious perfection, where we expect a human being to live according to certain standards, either the standards of the times that one lives in, or a religious textbook, or the accepted moral norms of the society. And those who live according to that are regarded as virtuous or perfect people. But in human beings, with the coming of human beings, a new tendency starts, which we don't find in the animal kingdom. It is to go beyond whatever nature's first mold is given to us. This is so much inbuilt in our software and in our hardware also, though we don't touch it now, but it's so much inbuilt. Even in the hardware, it's true that even our body tends to try to exceed itself, and as the Olympic records will show us, the records in cricket games will show us that even the body tries to exceed. There is a change in the very body structure, the neuronal structure in the brain. All this is happening, but this striving towards something greater than man is given to man, and that's why he is on one side most discontented of all creatures. On the other side, he is the fittest candidate meant for yoga. For what is meant by yoga is essentially, as the word implies, to unite, to join. To join what is parted. Parted not in essentiality, but parted in our consciousness. So, what is it with which we are parted, or we seem to be disunited? One, we are evidently parted with the world around us. We don't know, we don't have the secret of how to harmonize even between two people. Forget about the rest of creation. We don't know how to organize even with the dumb, mute plants and animal life, which really doesn't do any harm to us. It's parted. There is a sense of separation. We are parted in another sense, that we are parted from our own soul. We don't know who we truly are. And we are parted from our own highest self, the divine being from whom we have emerged. And if this was enough, still yoga can take us to here. But Sri Aurobindo brings in that new element. We are parted from our own highest and deepest possibilities. Now, this possibility is not just of our soul uniting with the divine, but possibilities that in nature are hidden and concealed. So here in Sri Aurobindo brings us a new truth which is so evident, as I said, oldest of the old. If we look at this world, one thing we all know, that change is permanent. So the one thing which is certain is change. But what this change is, we don't understand. So some people flow with the change, but they don't know where the change is going. So they end up with fashion, flow with life. That's one way of living. That change is accepted. Second, who are wary of the change because it's we don't understand what's happening, so they fall back into rigid kind of conservatism because they can't understand which way the world is going. There's a third type who completely discard the whole world of change as appearances which are ever changing and withdraw into some kind of a silent peak to find the stable basis, the Shiva's breast on which the Kali's dance is taking place. Kali's dance is tremendous for the human consciousness. So one longs for the Shiva's breast where one can rest in peace. Two ways to rest in peace, rather only one way. One is the RIP, but that's not really rest in peace. But the real rest in peace, we're not like Shava but a Shiva. So this is the way people handle change. But to handle change is one of the most important secrets one has to learn. So, how does nature handle change? And there we find a very interesting secret about life and about yoga. Nature handles change by throwing a challenge, and one has to take the challenge, adapt, evolve, and not evolve and adapt by cutting oneself off, but by integrating. This is something very interesting. Nature takes in the challenge, it goes through processes, different kinds of processes, mostly unconscious processes. And then it learns to adapt in ways wherein the species evolves, and along with that, the environment also, it forms a new kind of relationship with the environment. It's because there is a conscious intelligence hidden within creation. This is what is, if we go to its still deeper root, we say the divine is hidden in all things. So, I'll just give you an example in botany. I was very amazed. These very fascinating facts, but just one thing. Just one of the many, many things. So there is a tree when it tries to throw a root down, and supposing it encounters a rocky layer. So what does the tree do? We human beings, if we encounter rock, we say, yeah, we are not concerned, we'll go elsewhere. And we'll find another rock worse than the first one. So we come back. We don't know which rock is better. But what does the tree do? It out of itself takes out a substance. I'm forgetting the name of the tree, but I'm not talking of science fiction, but something much better than science fiction. So these little drops go onto the rock, and the rock begins to melt little by little by little by little, till it finally knows how to bore a hole through the rock. And the roots go out through the rock. Now you see, it's amazing. It's a wonder of nature, where the rock and the tree have learned to coexist, and the tree draws minerals from the rock, learning to adapt, integrate, and assimilate. So what is this process of nature? Is it just a meaningless thing going around? Is it just some kind of a chance, random accidents? But if we look at nature closely, one has to be blind to call it a random process. It looks random because we don't know what really is happening. We don't know all the forces that are active at any given point of time. And sometimes our language fails and baffles us. Supposing we were to say, oh, the tree is intelligent and behaving in manner which is very intelligent, people will laugh at us. Well, the tree may not be intelligent, but there is this intelligence which is operating within the tree. There is an intelligence operating within the matter, dumb matter, within atoms, electrons, and everywhere. And what is this intelligence doing? So here comes Sri Aurobindo with a very, very interesting answer. Now, this is there in hinted in some of the ancient lore, like the Dasavatar and some places. Vedanta speaks about evolution of the soul. Tantra speaks about evolution of forms. And it does say that 84 lakh yonis after which human beings are prepared. So there are several parallel processes going on. One is that in the dumb creation, what is nature doing? It's bringing out possibilities that are hidden. After all, what is a plant? Plant is nothing but a living rock. So out of out of, and it feeds on the rock minerals and all those things. So it feeds on it, but a new species comes, altogether new, with new possibilities. A rock cannot multiply, though there is also a, there are places where there is actually a rock which multiplies. No one knows how, but that's a different thing. So now the plant, when the plant life comes, it is holds on to the rock. You see the algae. It's very difficult to understand whether they are living or not when they are, stuck to the rock. This book Illusions by Richard Bach, starts with that, and something very fascinating to look at all this. But then afterwards, this algae, the first little green layer, it will grow into a variety of plants and trees and fruits and flowers, all this. So new possibilities comes out of where? Out of rock. Rock itself has come out of where? Out of nothingness. And from where people derive the gospel of nothingness. But ask them that how did nothingness give rise to somethingness? One is at loss because there is something hidden inside, concealed within creation. That is the divine consciousness. This we know, we speak about divine being hidden in creation. But what is he doing there? His work is not just to intervene time to time when we call him and suddenly he comes and intervenes. There is something going on tremendous. And that something is divine is bringing himself out. And who is the one who is doing this work on his behalf? It is nature. She is creating different names and forms for the divine to enter, like houses she is building. Just like we have the story in Manu and Shatrupa's story. Let me not go into the temptation for too many stories. But then this is what is happening, that she builds a form, invites the divine, and what divine comes and inhabits it. But the form can only allow only a little bit of the divine consciousness to express. So he says, ma'am, you have done a good job, but I need a little bigger room. You see, do you remember that story of Satyavrat and the fish which grows bigger and bigger? Every time he turns back, the fish says, I've grown bigger, get me a bigger bowl. So something like this happens, the consciousness expands and there is no... so when the consciousness expands, it needs a new form. So as it expands, a new form emerges. Out of the plant, animal form emerges. So it can allow for swiftness, it can allow for expansion more than even a small bird, though the tree is much bigger on which it takes shelter. But the bird's range of movement is much more. It can migrate through miles and miles. So, or the fishes. So even though the form is small, the possibility of consciousness moving through a wide range begins to manifest in the animal world. So, and then through the different layers of the animal world, it's a fascinating story, and I think we should not get into that. Then comes man. So, what happens in man? In man, there comes the mind. So, mind has its own way of, bringing out the possibilities inside. So, like just we were discussing on the walk that, exoplanets and there are new planets which purely by virtual reality people are creating, where people go have a meeting, maybe have chai, samosa and whatever not. So this is how the mind is beginning to conceive new possibilities. And based on these new possibilities, new kinds of, from within the human being, we often see our children too smart with the smartphone. And I am not right now speaking in favor or against the smartphone. That's not the subject. But see what's happening. We just casually gloss over it. Oh, बच्चों के हाथ में phone दे दो बस busy हो जाते हैं. But if you see closely what's happening, that which takes somebody like my generation so much more time to learn, they just pick up so fast. What's happening? A kind of intuitive sense of handling the gadgets is coming up. They don't use these words. They don't understand it this way. But they handle it so intuitively. Give them a machine and they tuck, 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 tuck. It's not like they are learning it in a conscious way. But new things which are hidden inside have to emerge. The point is that through all this process, nature is trying to, what we call as evolution is nothing else but manifestation. Nature is trying to manifest the possibilities of the divine consciousness which is hidden in creation. So what is it has manifested? It has manifested rocks and rivers, and in the material world it has manifested beauty of form. It has manifested various possibilities, like life takes the form of a flowing river. Life likes to flow. Or maruts, when the winds are blowing around, the sun shining. So all the symbols, of the divine it has tried to create in material form. That's what nature has done. It's so marvelous. And because the Vedic rishis knew it, they knew that the symbol can be connected to the reality. So they didn't have to build a temple so much like you see the sun every morning and pray to it. Just now we heard such a beautiful invocation of, the most auspicious form of Savitri. It's an invocation of the sun. Where is the temple of the sun? The whole universe is the temple of the sun. Every morning, ritual is offered in the temple of the sun. By whom? By nature. How does it offer the ritual? The little bird on the bough will, call us. Shuru ho gaya hai. Puja, utho, utho, utho. Wake up call. Shovindo uses the word, the bird calls from every bough. Then you see the winds, the priestly winds. And where is the altar for this sun? Earth herself becomes the altar, that light up. So the sun is lit up. And the rivers, when the morning sun, you see the same water. And you see the same water when the sun is setting. Everything as if is celebrating and consecrating. A ritual worship is going on in the unseen temple of the, or the seen temple of the unseen Lord. Recreating that. So when we know how to connect, it's a different kind of story altogether. So now all this in the plant world, it brings out life. Now with the coming of life, dynamic force, consciousness, trying to reach out to million things, to join them together. Life has this tendency to want to join together. Matter cannot. It's a very, very separate, distinct thing. But with life comes this tendency to join, to unite. First glimmers, jets of not love, we can't call it love, but jets of sense appeal in which love tends to flow. See, in animals, other than snake, perhaps even in snake, we don't know, but there's some semblance. Snakes and fishes, you don't find it really. But if you see the birds and further, this sense of care, this, wanting to protect, feed the younger. Interestingly, the cold-blooded animals, you don't find it. The fish and the reptiles. But further on you find it in birds, you find it in the four-footed animals, the way they take care of the young. It's just like a human being. So new possibilities are beginning to emerge through the same act. They reproduce, but the child they feel is an extension of themselves. Then comes man. Now with man, still newer possibilities. Thought wants to know, understand what this world is about. And with this thought wanting to understand, it begins to stretch itself, sound the universe. At first it tries to sound it by physical means, science. It wants to sound the universe. So it sends probes, it sends yarn, it sends, Pandubis, submarines and all these things to plumb this universe physically. At the end it says there is something which escapes. So it wants to go beyond, it wants to catch that hidden thread of life. And ultimately, going through all these processes, at some point it says, okay, but who am I in this dungeon laboring? Who am I? What is it that I am doing? And that's when conscious yoga starts. But who took man up to this point? How did man reach this point? It's not disconnected. It's not like we are hanging in a vacuum and suddenly one day we say, okay, let's do yoga, let's go to a... There is a long process in which everything feeds the inner fire without our knowing it. Strangely, things which we call as pleasure dump the fire. So that's why Indian civilization, knowing this, always if you look at the way science developed and, we had science, we had, medicine, everything was there. But it never went to develop in this way that it can completely stifle the fire. It was always, okay, that's fine, but let this grow. Because this is the most important thing. So, this feeds the fire, but most importantly, pain feeds the fire. When things are taken away from us. Now you see, all this is play of nature. So nature, when it sees that, we are too much asleep, so it says, look here, boy, don't be, you're too happy with life, no? That's what they say, that who is this spoil sport? Okay, fine, you're too happy. Yes, life is so wonderful. It is, what a grace it is. My husband is, or wife is Mr. Perfect, tick mark. My child, the most obedient child in the world, tick mark. He is going to the best school in the city, tick mark. Everything is tick mark. And you feel blessed. But nature thinks otherwise. You have stopped growing. So what does it do? It punctures one of the bubbles. It just needs a small little prick. Just punctures one of the bubbles. And then we go through all that. Hey, what happened? Grace, where are you? You have become cruel. But actually, that's the grace. Now the grace has come. Grace decided that this fellow is sleeping too long. And then the grace comes, and we want to know what is this world? Who am I? Why? What is there a God or not? That is the time we remember God. Otherwise, God is there, but a neat image of God. He is there to give us all that we need. After that, he should be shut off in his little prison. Many of the temples or places are, or in a cupboard, we shut him out. You stay there. I'll come and pray. You give me what I want. So, this is how one continues in life till a time comes when one wants to make sense of all this. And that's when conscious yoga, seeking, thirst. Yoga is not about learning a process or a method. In nature, it doesn't work like that. How does nature operate? It creates a seeking, an urge. In animals, it's not a seeking, but an urge. Why? Because there is a challenge of life. When there is a challenge, one wants to go past that challenge, and thereby there is a urge inside, and that urge eventually changes a zebra into a giraffe, because it faces the challenges. So human beings, we also, when we face challenges, a time comes when this urge changes into a conscious seeking, and when it changes into a conscious seeking, then conscious yoga begins. So what was happening till now, that is also yoga. Who was doing it? We have this strange anthropomorphic view of life, that everything, we are the doers, consciousness comes with us. There is no consciousness in plants, animals, or anything. And even God comes with us. We are the ones who define and describe God. And this whole creation is meant for us. Even God, if at all, is meant to keep us at the center. This anthropomorphic view, when it collapses and we want to know the origin, the source, that's when yoga begins. But up till this point, there is a yoga going on in nature. And who does the yoga? As we see in beautifully described in the Gita, that it's He, the divine being, presence, immanent divine in creation. He is doing the yoga. He is doing the yagna. So through the yagna, new things are emerging. You put the old into the yagna and new things emerge. There is a whole interchange and a process going on. So the same thing is happening in creation, that every creature is bringing its own little cry into this, feeding into this vast fire. What is nature doing? Nature, all the creatures, when they have put their cry into the bundle, it lifts it to the sun. How does it do it? Through the trees, through the cry of things, through the mountains, peaks. They're all nature's ways of reaching it out to the sun. Through the tendrils of the trees. And then, after a while, the sun goes into quiescence. There is a quietude. And then, sun comes out with new possibilities which emerge in creation. Every day this happens, countless things. So this is exactly what yoga is about. When we offer something of ourselves to the divine, what ultimately happens through that process? Divine accepts. For a long time, it's a process which seems mechanical, but the divine is watching over. It is He who has given us the aspiration and the inspiration to start the process. He has already initiated. That's why Sri Aurobindo says, he who has chosen the infinite has been chosen by the infinite. But after a while, he says, okay, fine, I say my yes. So then a new process begins, that whatever we have given to the divine, that comes out in a more luminous, in a more beautiful form. This is the offering in the Vedic yogas, where we speak about the Ghritam being offered, and the illumined intellect, and it becomes more and more wider, more intuitive, more revelatory. So when our thoughts, what does it mean practically in modern terms, is that when we offer our thoughts to the divine, direct them to the divine, when we read about the divine, when we want to understand the divine, then our mentality begins to grow luminous. This is exactly what the Vedic yoga is. But now in a more psychological way, we have to understand it. Same way with our life force. When we offer our life force to the divine, for the divine service, for the divine work, then what happens? This life force becomes more and more luminous steeds. It's no more like a tired, spent force, the way it is presently. And the same way, if we can offer our body's activities to the divine, make our every day a prayer and a worship, every action of the body, then the body itself will one day become a luminous vessel. It's already on the way towards it. So this unconscious or subconscious yoga which is going on in nature, where nature is offering everything on our behalf to the Lord, and whatever Lord gives to nature, nature distributes it to everyone according to our receptivity and capacity. Now, nature has created out of all this process a man, a being, very interestingly, who is called as Purusha. Not Purusha in the sense that we are only Purushas and Stri, but Purusha in the sense this Purusha which is in everybody. So, why this word? Because he has a capacity or a possibility to become one with the Lord. Man is a part creator. That is the beauty of man. Something of the Maya, that power to build forms is given to man. Through his imagination, he builds. Through his intelligence, he builds. So, in him, in human beings, intelligence, the operations of intelligence can become more and more conscious. And not only more and more conscious, they can be upgraded to higher and higher possibilities. It can become a luminous intelligence, it can become an intuitive intelligence, a revelatory intelligence, an all comprehending intelligence. So, all these possibilities begin to emerge in a human being through the conscious yoga. So, subconscious yoga takes place, all life is a subconscious yoga because we don't know its goal, its purpose. Most of us live like that. Let's now zoom in on only on human beings. But through all the tussle of life, some wisdom comes with the graying of hairs, hopefully. That's why people say, बाल सुखाए नहीं है धूप में बुद्धि आप. So it's what happens when we go through the process. We stumble, we fall, we rise, we wake up. All this happens. Looks like a very random process, but it's not random. Behind the randomness, there is a purpose. That is the beauty. And when we understand it, then we love the play because it's a play. Actually, it's a play. Even the danger, difficulties. So a person who goes through all this, by the time he is 80, you see the difference between how truly a grandparent should. I don't know whether they do it or not, but generally it is believed that they do. And the third generation, grandparenting is given only to human beings. And the beauty is that when the child makes little mistakes and parents are very serious, they are in 30s and they are very, and parents, what do they say? Arey, you also used to do it. Now what has happened? They have grown wiser through all this. They understand that it's not about the fall, it's about the rise after the fall. But parents are worried about the fall because so they say you also went through this process. Every time you fall and you rise, you grow in strength. So then I'm not saying that falling is a good way of rise, growing in strength, but it's inevitable in the course of life. So many things come and happen, and every time we take it as a challenge. So when we look at life, we realize that in everybody this yoga is going on. Only the person is not conscious. Every time a heart breaks, which is so common during adolescence. So what does a human being do? If you look at the processes, ultimately, he ultimately grows into a more luminous love. Of course, he can shrink. For a moment, he shrinks. But then when he comes out, he is a wiser person with a wider love, with a more vaster, with an ability to accommodate, adapt, adjust to many things which otherwise he would not have had he not gone through this process. So some change is taking place. But this is a very, very slow process with much waste. We don't want a person to have, 10 heartbreaks to learn how to love. It's a very wasteful process, certainly. But why not that right from the beginning, if we can learn how to love without going through this process? So it is possible, says yoga, if your heart can tap the source of love, if you can join with the all love, then that love will begin to love in us and through us. I'm just giving one example. And the same thing with mind. It goes through so many mistakes, errors, even sometimes in the name of truth, in the name of science, in the name of all kinds of things, resisting all temptation to get into that, scientific debate. But after all, what happens? After 2 years, we realize, no, this is not it. Something else is needed. After another 10 years, we realize something else is needed. So this is such a wasteful process. But a yogi, he turns this intelligence towards the divine, in search of the divine. So he is not lost to this understanding of creation. This is what Sri Aurobindo speaks of in integral yoga. Of course, there is a kind of yoga where he says, I have nothing to do with the world, I just turn and just know the one. That is one kind of yoga. But Sri Aurobindo speaks of the integral yoga, where there is integral perfection. Can our human intelligence know about the workings of creation in a much deeper, completer, wider, wiser, and not only know, but with a much powerful, more capacity to manipulate, because knowledge is empowerment. And Sri Aurobindo would say yes. So when we read Sri Aurobindo, he speaks of things, what a virus is, how exactly you can deal with life, what is steam, what is Agni, all this. Now we have two choices, either to accept that he is a yogi and can know better than us, or we say, ki, no, no, we'll discover it in our own way. So when we say we'll do it our own way, what is that way? Scientific way. Then it's a long subconscious yoga. Eventually we will discover. One day we will discover that we were just being fooled by a little tiny creature because we were too much glued and hypnotized by the creature. So we couldn't really understand what's behind the creature and what's within us. So one day we will learn, maybe after 100 years. After all, from Spanish flu till today, we haven't really learned anything. The same social distancing, masks, and vaccine. This is the same processes. That means we really didn't learn going through all this process. But there are within the body untapped potential. Now, the moment we start looking at it, yogis are known. I mean, I've been in Ladakh where lamas, for example, they can, to become the head lama, the, the ultimate fellow, he has to sit in cold winter night by the side of the river, soak a blanket in the cold river, wrap it around his, chest, and by the heat generated by tapas, he has to dry it. Do it 21 times before he can. Now, this is the tremendous way he has learned that vital energy conserved can be so powerful. Now, when somebody has this kind of a vital energy, it's not highest spiritual yoga, but just the vital energy. Look at the possibility that you can move around bare bodied. Not recommended, of course. It's not decent either. But you can imagine that this is the possibility in a human body. I think that new movie which has come, is it new? Doctor Strange. 4 years. Many other cocoon, that there are possibilities inside us. Bringing out those possibilities is manifestation. Yoga is meant to assist in the divine manifestation. It is Sahi Yoga. Why the divine created all this hangama or tamasha or mela, whatever we call it, if it was only to quit? So Sri Aurobindo gives us this fresh perspective, not a perspective, but for the purposes of limitations of language, we may use the word perspective or viewpoint or whatever we want to put it, that all evolution is a manifestation. And all that is happening in creation, it has started with this one word, that I want to become many. And with that one power, all creation, executive force, Shakti, went, became nature, this material nature, and says, I'll do it. And she is busy doing it. So whatever is happening on earth we call as creation, at its bottom it's a manifestation. Through names and forms, the nameless and the formless is manifesting himself. So then we can join this stream. When we look at it, then yoga is no more unnatural or abnormal. It's not like give unto Caesar what is due to Caesar and give unto the, give to the devil what is due to the devil. No. Give to the Rome what is due to Rome. No, it's not that. Because it's Caesar and Rome are two ways of looking at one reality. The divine and his creation are not two, but one reality. There are two ways of looking at it. Divine standing back from the creation is the one. But divine throwing himself into creation is the same divine who has become all this. Now, when we look at all this, then we understand that the yoga is not something abnormal that one does, secluding oneself from this whole world, isolating in a cave. No, through the life processes. The mother, there is a beautiful prayer where she says that hours of contemplation help us to unite with the divine. They are necessary to disengage from this whole machinery of nature and learn to go within and to try to aspire and find the divine source. She says it's necessary. But she says equally necessary are those hours when we go through life and all the elements of our nature have to pass through the anvil where they are purified. So this means that yoga is a 24/7 process. It's not a process which is done only in fact, at one place the mother even goes on to say that you can progress through meditation, but work done with the right attitude, you can progress 10 times more. 10 times. And the mother and Sri Aurobindo are not known to exaggerate even one iota of anything. So how? Because we are normally doing the same work, but we are doing with one attitude: money, name, fame, ambition, house, all these things. But when we do work as a dedicated offering, as a seva of the divine, then the whole life begins to change. So, the same processes that we do, same thing, nothing else, same thing with the heart, to learn to love in the true way, human beings, plants, animals, everything. That how does the divine love this creation? Can I carry little bit, one out of hundredth part of that, and love this world and everything within it? So that means inwardly we will remain connected with the divine, from whom we'll keep receiving that infinite source of from right from the source, and then we are just like a spreading, radiating channel and instrument. So, same processes, but we have to undergo an inner change. The inner change is that right now these processes are very diffused, chaotic, disorderly, because nature works like that. We are part of the mass. So, she is acting on everybody together. It's like a classroom where there are 100 students, and nature cannot attend to, I mean, the teacher cannot attend to everyone. So, so many hands are being raised, there is chaos in the class. That's how nature operates, because it's like a mass consciousness. But there are some individuals which is who have become conscious enough that nature says, I can't handle this, school is of ignorance, is the child is exceptional, take it. So the divine mother takes now that child out of that school and puts the child into the free progress system of the divine. What is the free progress system? You progress according to your soul need, not according to, that was the whole purpose. If you look at the ashram, it's an educational institution. And the educational institution is a part of the ashram. It's very interesting. So, in fact, the acceptance of education means that we accept evolution. Otherwise, why would we accept education? That we can learn, we can grow, we can bring out new things. So, this is what is going on. So, in that process, when we take to that second step, we are out of the school of nature, which where we progress through much pain, suffering, ignorance. When we start progressing consciously, then there are conscious processes, which means we have to learn to focus, concentrate. We have to understand this is the purpose. The purpose is not satisfying our ego. Purpose is not to satisfy my desired self. Purpose is not to gather name, fame, money, and all the rest. The purpose is to become a pure and perfect channel, flawless and faithful instrument, strong and supple vehicle, wide and plastic vessel of the divine, so that he pours, and as he pours, the instrument becomes upgraded. This is what Sri Aurobindo brings in. That ultimately, inner consciousness, revelations, all this can come. But the instrument is still too crude. So, our physical instrument, which has been created by nature so far, still has a lot of animal stuff in it. Only this little brain, where the prefrontal cortex, some rational possibility and little bit is there. The emotions have been brought under reason. That's how in this human brain we see this. And there is something else which is jutting out, the prefrontal area, which we don't know what it is meant for. There are areas in brain where we don't know. So nature is trying to work upon that instrument, but it'll take maybe 10,000 years through all this process. But we can do it consciously by linking our intelligence to the divine. Okay, that sounds very difficult. Okay, just read Sri Aurobindo and the mother. Just read Savitri. So what happens is now, see, it's engaging in yoga. When I read, my eyes are involved, my nervous system is involved, my hands are involved, and if I write, even these are involved. And the messages are going to the brain, and from the brain they are going into something still deeper, and a response comes. So the brain begins to get molded, because the first organ that has to be molded. If the brain and the heart are not ready, the rest of the part cannot immediately receive it, because they are the one who have to make rest of the body conscious. And then slowly, because we allow the greater consciousness, the higher consciousness, to pass through the body again and again and again. That's why some people don't understand lifelong engagement with yoga. What does it mean? Because we are working. When we work like that, slowly, slowly, that greater consciousness begins to pour and pour and pour and pour. And some change, like the tree dropping one drop after another of something from inside, and the body begins to change. This is something which people observe here. It's amazing. It is something to be seen, to be believed. Aging tends to slow down. I won't use the word stop. Of course, the vital completely stops aging. That's a different story. Whatever you want to understand it, why does it stops aging? It doesn't. The sense that you are 60, 70, 80 just goes away. That's how it happens. The body ages, but still begins to slow down. Why? Because a new consciousness begins to work upon it. One of the first effect of the new consciousness will be to delay the aging, prolong life, not by any external processes, not by kaya kalpa vigyan. This used to be done but by this process that inwardly outward. This is the change which ultimately this is the process of all authentic change. Kayakalp is fine, but it's like an individual goes through a processes, shut himself down like the eagle sheds the old all this dead tissue and all, and comes out new, but only the body. Even imagine an asura can do it, and what would happen if the consciousness is not changed? But here, through this constant pouring in, matter begins to get impacted. People often say, I don't understand, Sri Aurobindo, what should I do? I said, read it. So, what is the people, this one big problem with human consciousness is what is the advantage? Once Amrita was reading and Sri Aurobindo was passing by and he saw him reading. He said, very good, very good. He was reading portions of the Life Divine from the Arya. And he said, sir, I don't understand. It doesn't matter, you read it. Why? Because Sri Aurobindo is a perfect gentleman. He will not say why. But imagine when you are reading, this consciousness is going inside. Ultimately, they are capsules of light. We won't. Isn't it the experience of so many that initially they don't understand, but after 10 years, their understanding begins to emerge? I know so many people who say this, and then it is not just about understanding. She has said that his words will create new brain cells. Why? Because she is the great creatrix. Nature is only a delegate power. So she is the great creatrix. So she starts tweaking. But of course, because we are interconnected, that's how the yoga of nature operates. You don't have a freak superhuman being. But we are interconnected, so this process translates into a collective change, which we see happening in children, which we see happening in more and more youngsters nowadays. Often people say, where is the supramental change happening? So I tell them, look into the some of the youngsters. So where are they? So I have number of names, youngsters and children. So I say, I'll give you the names. You talk to them, you'll see it different. An age when they should be doing some other things, they are here. They want to, engage with this yoga. Why? Because the very body is changing. Mother has gone to that extent that she has brought in the supramental chip, if I may use the word, though she said the new substance. It has entered into nature and she has accepted it. It means that all the children who are born, the moment you take a human body, earlier taking a human body was, oh my God, even for a great being, it was, oof, I have entered a prison. Now taking the human body, you will taste something which one has never tasted before. Because a new substance is integrated with nature. Paucity of time, and that's not the main subject, so I'm not going into its detail. 1958, Mother's Message, where this new substance has been integrated. So the very body is beginning to change. And just imagine its far-reaching implications. 50 years down the line, people have to change the aircraft. Why? Because girls have grown taller. Have you noticed that girls are growing taller? So nice, it's happening, the changes are taking place. And many of the characteristics which strongly distinguished man and woman, they are changing. So the result is, this is just 50 years, 60 years. Imagine these changes are in geometric progression. Once they pick up 200, 300 down the line, you'll have a human being with a different brain altogether. And he will look at us and laugh at us. When we will say, we used to wear masks and social distancing, they'll laugh. They'll say, oh, acha, you didn't know. No, we were very ignorant. We thought we are very knowledgeable. Oh, is it? You were doing such crude stuff like surgery, cutting open. Actually, you were doing it. Yes, we were doing it. Sorry. You can do it. Your hand can, light can emerge, and you can, after all, we have reached that point where we talk about ultrasound and laser surgery. Now, where does light come from? If it is hidden inside, it can emerge. The body itself can become an instrument. You can use the hand. It's not like you will see a light emerging like this. That's too much, too dramatic. But could it be that the healing energies can just flow from the hand and we just say and harmonize things? Everything is possible. But we have to allow this possibility which is there in nature. Nature is struggling to make these things emerge out of the sleep. And plenty of such things. If you read the mother's list of 12 things which she wants to give to earth as a gift, all that she wants is you be ready. If she wants, if we are ready, she will give us as a gift. So all these new things are pouring in. In this sense, yoga is a means to participate and joyously participate. What greater joy there can be than to participate in a new creation? I have never understood what is this joy that people experience in cutting off and going into nirvana. Well, there is the joy in the sense that you are freed from the rub and the stress of life. That's okay. To that extent, yes. But this joy of exceptional joy of participating in the new creation. All creation up till now is nothing else but a yoga of nature, through which he is manifesting hidden divine possibilities. For the fish to look at a bird fly is no less miraculous. Why? Even to look at creatures crawling on the land, suddenly out of the fish world, a creature rolls out and says, I can live on both. The fish world would have been collapsed. If they could have a discussion, all the TV channels in the fish world would have wondered, is he normal or abnormal? They call it turtle. But I am not sure whether, he is a normal guy. How can he live on the land and yet survive? Some fishes would have said he's a madcap, some would have said freak miracle, some would have condemned and forcibly tried to drag into the water. But the turtle was here to stay, Kurma avatar, and to grow and to evolve into a reptile and a bird and beast and man. So too with man. Man has to now enter into this great plan and become a conscious collaborator. Why conscious collaborator? Because if we don't, why nature is created? People don't like it. They say, oh my God, this is very painful. If we don't collaborate consciously, it is far more painful. Look at these species that have evolved unconsciously. And since we have to now individually, eko ham bahushyam, so each one has to individually become a vehicle of the divine consciousness. How can it happen if we remain unconscious? You can't create, supreme consciousness and an unconscious state. They don't go together. So now she has accelerated the process of becoming conscious. Everything in life is like evolution fast forward. And through this process, we have to become conscious and use conscious means. All the means are there within us. We don't need anything from outside. The means which are within us is will. The means that is within us is faith. The means that is within us is feelings. The means that is within us is thought. And the means that is within us, which initiates us into the yoga, is the aspiration. All that is within us. Nature has given us, and the patram, the Yagyavedi is already there. The human body, if you really stretch the hands and look at it, it's a perfect triangle. And at the center of it, the fire. Everything the divine has given. Nature has created this creature and says, now come with me, come forward, let's go together. So that thousands of years of evolution, tens of thousands with all the dangers and whatever, can be compressed into a few hundred years. She says that, come, help me, now you are grown up. You were my baby when you were an animal, but now you are a human being. Even as a human being, for a long time I treated you like a kid. You were busy playing with toys of cars, big toys. Now I want you to participate in the real game. That practice match is over. We should be happy, and in that happiness, in that joy, we should consciously collaborate, knowing fully that what we are doing is helping in the divine manifestation upon earth. Process will be the same. New things will emerge. First, there will be the challenges of life, outwardly, inwardly. Then, to face the challenges, we have to bring out new things. And when new things come, we have to integrate it with the old. Whatever can undergo a change must undergo a change. What cannot undergo a change will be thrown out as a catharsis. And then that has to spread around in everyone, because that's how all life is. It is conterminous with world, conterminous with creation. So this is the process, and with this we can pause. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take. Namaste.
Namaste, Alokda. This is Manan. I'll ask
Ah,
the question.
Manan. Ah, yes, please.
So, Dada, in nature, we see that, you also mentioned that we see plants and animals strive and spontaneously try to establish a balance with the entire ecosystem. So, in fact, more the chaos, more is the urge for progress to, the impulse to establish a working order. And
Yes.
unity but not uniformity. But in terms of human beings, why is it so difficult for us to reconcile contradictions, whether it be, say, about the objective and subjective experiences, or it be
Yeah.
about material living and spiritual worldview, the
Yes. Yes.
inner and outer states, and even the essence and the form. So
Yes.
the vital and the vital. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yes.
And why do we always often, even when we try to use our intellect, we already have a bias that it's not always that we are not in awareness of it, but we find it so difficult to deny and to move out of our small boxes. So, what is at the source of this? If you could
So
talk
there are
about that.
two unique things that have happened in human beings, which are the source of the difficulty you are pointing out, and we have to grapple with this. First is because of the necessity of each unit becoming conscious divine. Eko ham bahushyam. There is the shell of the ego which is created. This is not there in animal life. So that is they escape this problem which the ego brings in, and ego comes with the mind. Just as with life comes pain and suffering, with the mind comes ego. It brings in evil, it brings in deceit, it brings in a host of forces. Because now each unit wants to survive independently in isolation with the rest. This is the initial stages, but eventually one has to face it and overpass it. The means and mechanisms are there by constant surrender of the ego self to the divine self, but most importantly by discovery of the psychic being, so that we no more identify ourselves with the ego. I'm just rushing through that process. The second is the inherent complexity. See, below, for instance, it's very easy for unicellular organisms to adapt because there is nothing much to really adapt. But as organisms become more and more complex, with human beings, there is tremendous complexity. The whole past lives within us. The fish, the insect, the animalcules, the protozoans, and of course the that's why viruses look for human cells, no, as because they want they feel in the human cell something where they can actually inhabit and draw the energy from. So all this complexity which comes, the tree, that's why we become jadvat sometimes. The stone, the mineral, we still draw life indirectly through all these processes. And of course the dinosaur, the reptile, the bird, the beast, all of them are inside us. So we have to deal with this entire range of phenomena in conscious yoga. In unconscious yoga, it's different. Nature just throws out what has to be thrown out, takes up different subspecies, transition species, and then integrates. It's an unconscious process. But with human beings, there will be many such kind of half-hearted attempts. Aurobindo speaks about it. But each of them is a necessary step. It's like, there'll be several subspecies or some will abort, some will become provide material for the next. Like that, the evolution will take place. It is very unlikely that one human being will straight away from human will grow into the supramental being. Sri Aurobindo in the Life Divine, if you read through the last chapter, says it's unlikely to happen like that. Each one will bring out some unique aspect. That's part of now, that is done, and that's nature keeps it. And then another person brings out another aspect. Because of this inherent complexity, this harmonization is extremely difficult in human nature. So these two things, inherent complexity and the ego self. Ego self, by discovering the psychic being, inherent complexity can only be tackled if one knows to endure through the process of yoga. In the process of yoga, all this complexity will be laid bare. One has to reckon with it. So most of us don't like to see, the little, brain inside us or the little dark patch inside us. We are very happy looking at, देखो 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 उसकी साड़ी पर दाग. तो विद द डे वी स्टार्ट सेइंग लगा चुनरी में दाग, मेरी चुनरी में भी दाग है, और एक नहीं बहुत सारे दाग हैं. तो वन हैज टू हैव एंड्योरेंस एंड परसिवरेंस. दिस इज ए क्वालिटी विच लुक्स लाइक ओ बस दिस ऑल रिक्वायर्ड. इट्स मिसिंग because we get frustrated very easily, we get restless, we get impatient, and we have to understand faith begins to falter when things emerge from within. I have known people, they go into depression even at a older age because they never imagined that they would be carrying within them things which that neat worldview that breaks down, the shell, the cocoon that breaks, which is ego has built. Consciousness enlarges, and the third thing which Sri Aurobindo says, as our consciousness begins to enlarge, we start taking into ourselves others. So each one becomes a representative being, adding to the difficulty, as if this was not bad enough. But once one learns the ropes and once one learns ki, okay, this is it, then one enjoys the process. It's like, हमाम है, सब उसमें नहा रहे हैं भगवान का. So then one enjoys because one knows that, so one can go through only if there is faith that behind everything there is the divine grace. One may not understand what's happening, but there is the divine grace which is working, operating, which many people over a period of time learn. They develop this kind of thing, okay, I will have to confront many things within me. The battle may seem prolonged like anything because each one is doing, let's put a figurative term, each one is doing the yoga for 100 persons. Now, if all of them do the yoga, then life would go much better and much faster. Because that's what a collective yoga means. It's a collective yoga by its nature. There is nothing like an individual supramental being. It has to be a group. So, in the collective yoga, each one either helps or hinders the others. So, each tendency becomes a tendency which is multiplied by the individuals who are there. It circulates in the whole environment. Equally, each victory tends to percolate and permeate in others. So, these are the three main difficulties of the yoga for us. The ego, the second is the inherent complexity, and the third is because we do it as a representative. Of course, there are many other chinna things, lower vital world, subconscious, all that is a different story altogether. It's a big task, basically. We have to understand, when one turns to yoga, in the beginning, one has beautiful experiences, psychic touches, glows, and one is, wonderful, this is so good. Yes, of course, wonderful. They are the ones which show us that, look here, she is with us. She says, look here, I am with you. And that's why the first focus should be to find the psychic being. Then the journey is very easy. Otherwise, when we read the life divine, if the spiritual higher consciousness, the lid breaks and it starts pouring in, it can create much more chaos than we can even imagine. The neat world, the moral, social, religious world breaks because that consciousness is very different. It doesn't respect any of these values here. It has a different set of values. How is our being going to adapt? So it's only if the psychic being has stepped into the front, primed the rest of the nature, open to mother. So that's why repeatedly Sri Aurobindo reminds, stay open to the mother. And the mother would tell us, endure and have faith. Persevere. Victory comes to the most persevering. Then this yoga can be done to the end. Otherwise, we reach a point and then start a journey again. Most people tend to do that. They reach a point beyond which they cannot take the stress of the yoga, the constant stress to change. So they reach a point and then they say, okay, for this life, this is enough. This is not a good attitude. Attitude should be till the last breath. Perish or conquer, whatever happens. Then it's wonderful. So it needs a warrior spirit. That is missing very often. More often it's a business spirit. मेरे को क्या मिला? Sometimes realizing कुछ नहीं मिला तो क्या हुआ? भगवान का काम किया. It's okay. Monkey didn't get either Lanka or Kiskinda. Probably he died in the process. What a joy to be, that little squirrel in the God's work. So it required certain qualities and attitudes. That's why you see the mother symbol, the 12 outer rings. So these things must be developed while we go through life. Out of which one quality that Sri Aurobindo stresses upon very much is equanimity. And another one is humility. Third one, sincerity. So these are some of the qualities. Perseverance. The flower, psychological perfection. Surrender. aspiration, courage. So these qualities will carry us through. Otherwise, as the yoga Agni proceeds, starts ripping open all the doors which are closed, then we have to face that challenge. But it's wonderful. As I said, when once you know the game, then you know it's a delightful game which the divine is playing, and we have to just tell him that make me your dice and throw it on the chessboard of time. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alokda, for this wonderful answer. I would like to take one more question and then we'll wrap up. Subodh is asking,
Yeah.
you have mentioned about the unconscious or the subconscious yoga being present in all animal life, but the survival killer instinct of animals feels to be in contrast with this innate unifying force. How do we reconcile those opposing forces of nature?
Yeah. So in animals, see, survival is a first necessity, not only in animal life, but in all life. But survival in the sense that the individual units have to be ready. The yoga is not a mass chaotic thing. So there has to be each individual unit which has to, be well rooted firmly on the soil. But this survival, now comes the paradox. Whether survival is only through a competitive strife or through an adaptive cooperation, that is the beauty of nature. Nature allows both lines. It allows the tiger to survive by a strong competitive individualism, and it allows the deer to survive through a cooperative. There are deers. One of them is called sambar. I don't know whether not the one which we eat, but there is this. I don't know what it's called in English, but it becomes acutely aware of the tiger far away. So it will start making sounds, and all other deer, they understand it and they will run. They have not seen the tiger because tiger is a very, very cunning cat. But one fellow wants and everybody runs. So this is an example of cooperative, not a competitive individualism. Who survives? Nature plays the game. Tiger, those comparisons, so many pounds, such this thing, all this. Deer, except one of those deer which is very odd looking, who can really give a nice kick. Who survives over a period of time? Shubin, there's a beautiful poem, The Tiger and the Deer. The tiger is near extinct because the fellow doesn't know cooperative. And the deer sprawls upon the plains of Ganges. And same thing we see in life. Troy, mighty civilization brought down because all around. So nature teaches you to advance along both lines. But at the end, it will show us that our individuality must be conterminous and co-adaptive with the rest of the environment, the ecosystem. And if we don't do it, it doesn't mind smashing, but it will allow that. So it has created both. Now, individual instinct of survival is a necessity. There is no doubt about it. I can't be waiting for my own sambar to say that there is a danger. I must be capable of dealing with the danger as it comes into my territory. But when I start devouring and praying, then comes the other truth. The eater eating himself is eaten. What happened to Genghis Khan, Alexander, the साम्राज्य जिसका सूर्य कभी ढलता नहीं था, is shrunk. What happened? Look at modern Greece. Look at England. Look at Genghis Khan and the Mongol army which went all over the world. So basically, nature has inbuilt mechanism because she's a conscious force. So what Sri Aurobindo reminds us, she is a conscious force. If there is this kind of competitive individualism goes to a point where it becomes a threat to others, nature will recoil back, and that recoil is very, very dangerous. So we learn the lesson eventually that भलाई इसी में है कि सबके साथ मिलकर चलो. Even in animal world, the same thing applies. Animals have learned that look, surviving as a alone like the mastodon, saber-toothed tiger, glorious example. Dinosaurs, you will collapse. But when you take all, dinosaurs, they literally devoured the earth. And look what happened after they went away. When they went away, you see that earth came out with many, many, many varieties, much more than that paleontology, that era when the dinosaurs were there. So basically, we have to understand there is a conscious force operating in nature. Both are required. The survival instinct is required because that's a part of the journey of man. Individual units have to be ready, strong, prepared. But this survival instinct, when it translates into devouring others and threatening other survival, then nature has that other instinct. Survival is the first necessity, not the last. Survival is only to establish our roots in the soil. But beyond it, there is growth, evolution, cooperative growth. All this is part of the journey. All competitive kind of individualism are foredoomed to failure. This we'll see in times to come.
Yeah, thank you, Alokda, for so
I want to
lucidly
say
explaining.
one thing, please, Abhishek.
Yeah,
It's not a question, Alokda, but I have to just say thank you to you so much, because 25 years ago, when I sat in your clinic and I talked to you and you spoke all these things to me in like 35 minutes, and I said, I can't understand. This is very difficult. Can you just give me a medicine, please? and now, after all these years, in last 2 years, this is the first webinar when I have smiled and laughed so much. It just means how much resonance has happened in these 20
Thank you.
years.
Thank you so much.
I'm
Thank you
so
so much.
grateful for this, the joy. And I want to just give a trick for this. I don't know. You said that you have to remember this is a game. So in my family, we put an alarm system on our mobile. Every few hours, an alarm goes. So we remember this is a game and we have to withdraw into the poise.
Wow.
And
Wonderful. So new ways human beings, all of us will come up with.
otherwise, the mind just goes into the world. So thank you so much, so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah. I think there is no more to say after what Rasiji has mentioned. So yeah, we would now like to wrap up the session if Alokda says so.
Yes, we can close it now.